You ever have one of those days where your whole life changes in a single breath? That was me standing in the doorway of my own half-rotted cabin watching Victoria Ashford, president of the Pine Valley HOA, march up with three guys in black suits, a stack of papers in her hand, and that look people get when they're about to tell you your entire world is now theirs. She didn't waste time either, told me I had 72 hours to pack my bags and go because according to some dusty heritage clause from 1847, the HOA now owned my land. Yeah, that happened. And for a split second, I'll admit my hands went cold. But she had no clue what she'd just stepped into. See, this cabin wasn't just mine. It was a time capsule, and there were bones in these beams older and tougher than anything she could throw at me. Name's Daniel Mercer. I'm 42, spent 15 years in Boston, hands deep in the guts of old museums making dead wood sing again. Maybe to most folks, this cabin looked like a pile of termite food sitting on 2 sad acres by Lake Pine Valley, but the second I saw it at a town auction with dust swirling around and nobody wanting to so much as sneeze in its direction, I saw treasure. Hell, when the auctioneer opened bidding, I shouted 25 cents. People laughed. Auctioneer looked like he was about to faint. But a minute later, gavel dropped, and for less than the price of a bad cup of gas station coffee, I owned what everyone else figured was a heap of old wood. First time I walked inside, the place felt alive. Chestnut beams, American chestnut, the kind wiped out by blight 100 years ago, notched together so tight I could barely slide a credit card between the joints. Whoever built this thing knew what they were doing, maybe even loved the work more than their own family. I started cataloging every board, every joint, the way you do with museum pieces. I was convinced I'd stumbled onto something bigger than a fixer-upper. Then the weirdness started. Out on the road, there was this black BMW parked silver-haired woman inside binoculars in her lap, eyes locked on my cabin like a hawk sizing up a rabbit. She didn't just pass through either, she kept showing up, sometimes alone, sometimes with men in suits, always watching, never approaching. It took a week before I realized this was surveillance. I installed cameras and caught her visiting 6 times in 3 weeks. That's when I decided to dig deeper. My big break. Found it in the basement behind a loose stone. Little carvings in the main beam, almost hidden at first. I thought they were just scratches. But up close they were deliberate, intricate symbols, some astronomical, some botanical, like a secret language. 7 marks in all. I called a historian buddy, and after a week he comes back at me with this wild news. Those carvings match the work of Elias Whitmore, a legendary craftsman whose furniture was museum grade. A single chair of his went for nearly $500,000 at auction once. And here I was, living in a house he built. I nearly fell over. Word got out, a few careful hints dropped online. Nothing specific, but enough that woodworking nerds started buzzing. That's when Victoria made her move. She called a town meeting, played the hero, told everyone I was an outsider trying to cash in on their history. I walked up, faced her, and told the truth. I wasn't here to gut their heritage. I was here to preserve it for them, for the country, for the story itself. Some folks nodded. But behind Victoria's smile, I saw something bitter, almost personal. That night, an old woman approached me, Eleanor Pricetown's retired librarian. She'd spent 50 years archiving every scrap of Pine Valley's history. She told me the Ashford family had a vendetta that ran back generations, all the way to Victoria's great-great-grandfather, who once tried and failed to buy this very cabin from Whitmore. His journals were still in the library, filled with rage, resentment, and plans to own the whole lakeshore. This wasn't about me. This was about finishing a family obsession that started before the Civil War. Eleanor and I started digging through archives, finding Whitmore's strange notes about ownership written among the stars. On her hunch, I flew my drone one clear night, pointed it down at the roof. Nearly dropped the controller when I saw it. The shingles lined up to form Ursa Major, the Big Dipper, pointing straight across the lake. We followed the line, found a giant old oak, dug around it with a metal detector, and unearthed a little iron box wrapped in oiled leather. Inside, Whitmore's will, dated October 1850, stating the cabin would belong to whosoever possessed the patience to perceive beauty within decay. And here's the kicker. Half the value had to go to local arts education for kids. So now it wasn't just about me or even Victoria. It was about protecting a legacy, one that could outlast all of us. But right as I thought I'd won, Victoria turned up the pressure flyers around town calling me a fraud, contractors getting warned not to work with me, late-night calls telling me to walk away before it cost you more than money. I'd be lying if I said it didn't shake me. Alone in that old cabin, wondering if I'd picked a fight too big to win. But then I looked up at those carvings, remembered Whitmore, how he built this place to outlast hate and greed. If I gave in, I'd be burying that spirit for good. That's when I reached out to Jake, a lawyer friend who'd tangled with Victoria before. He started digging and found the crack in her armor. Yeah, the heritage clause existed, but it belonged to a government that had been dissolved in 1923. The Pine Valley HOA, born in 1985, had zero claim to any of it. Victoria's legal bombshell was just smoke and mirrors. And suddenly I could breathe again. Town hall hearing day. Place was packed, neighbors, reporters, even a TV crew or two. Victoria swept in with 5 lawyers dressed to the nines like something out of a bad courtroom drama. For a minute, it felt like she had everyone eating out of her hand. But then Jake stepped up, calm as ever, and ripped their whole argument apart. Proved the HOA had no legal link to the 1847 charter, no authority, nothing. My turn came, and I played the drone footage, showed the carvings read, "Whitmore's will allowed." You could hear a pin drop. But the real blow came when Eleanor stepped forward and read out Thomas Ashford's old journal, proof of a generations-long plot to turn the whole lakeshore into a luxury resort. The room shifted. Neighbors who'd sided with Victoria suddenly saw themselves as pawns in an old family scam. Then Jake dropped the last bomb, proof that 23 families had been forced out of their homes by HOA fines, properties funneled back to Victoria's circle. This wasn't about preservation, it was organized theft. Victoria tried to fight back, called me an outsider and a liar, but nobody bought it. The board voted unanimously. HOA had no authority. My ownership was solid, and the case got bumped to the state attorney general for good measure. The room erupted, but all I could do was watch Victoria as she walked past me, face pale, voice tight, whispering, "This isn't over, Mercer. You have no idea what you're really fighting against." But her aura of invincibility was gone, and for the first time I saw fear in her eyes. And that's how it ended, at least for now. Me standing on the porch of the cabin everyone wanted gone, neighbors finally seeing the truth, and the woman who thought she owned the world walking away exposed and empty-handed. Whitmore's masterpiece survived, and so did I. But maybe the biggest lesson is this. Sometimes what you're really fighting for isn't a deed or a roof, it's the right to stand your ground when bullies try to rewrite the rules. So let me ask you, if someone came after your home with fake history and muscle, would you have backed down, or would you have stood your ground even when the whole town turned against you? Drop your thoughts below, right or wrong, justice or overreach. I want to hear your take. Because in the end, these battles are never just about land. They're about who gets to write the story.